I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Hi, Amanda. Welcome back.
We haven't seen each other.
We have not.
For like a month.
We released
our
time. Amazing episodes with Natalie Westlake.
Oh my God, so amazing.
But we did do those in 2024.
Yes.
So really, this is our first time. Welcome back. I've really missed you. You had a great vacation. You were in Florida. You were living it up.
I was away for 2 weeks, and it's really hard to come back and readjust to like life in Toronto in January.
Right. Oh.
It's tough.
There's a reason why they call it the blue January. January's divorce month. Like there's a lot. And, and it's also a time of resolution, setting new goals. Did you do any of that? Is that something you practice?
I always try and set some goals, but I want to set like realistic goals.
That's a good call.
I think some people, they set these big goals for the year and then they just disappoint themselves.
Well, right. What do they say? Like everybody goes back to the gym and then by February, it's like you're back to just the regular folks that were there all along.
I want to just like maintain things. Yeah. I don't need to do anything drastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do like Jonathan and I will sit down and we'll kind of, do a bit of like a business plan for our year.
Oh, how cute.
And set some goals. Yeah. We brought the kids in, let's talk more about kind of introduce them to that. What are we saving for? What do we want to do we want to travel? What kind of thing, what do you want to do at school?
These are
or new
responsible
activities?
things to do.
Yeah. For me though, I'm kind of like you. If I set a goal or if I deny myself something, it's obviously all I think about.
Yeah.
So I don't do a dry January, which bless him, Jonathan's doing right now.
I don't really
do that kind of stuff per se. I've
and
always
then
worked
drink
out
more in February.
That's exactly it.
Right.
Exactly,
it's like,
right.
To me, it's moderation.
You go on a diet, you just gain all the weight right back, right? So I'm not into that.
To me, everything's about balance and moderation.
One thing that I do, and actually my friend Carrie, shout out to Carrie, she got me onto this, but you set, I guess, the tone for the year by choosing a word.
A word, okay.
So literally anything that it's sort of wrapped up in a goal because it's, let's say, aspirational.
Okay.
So for me, my goal is, or my word, is integrity. I want people to associate me with somebody that is full of integrity. So I'm like, this now becomes a bit of a goal. If that is my word, if that is my intention for the year, then every action, I kind of use that as a benchmark. Is this in line with my word? So last year, my word was intentional. I wanted to really make smart choices and be intentional in my decisions, not make things on a whim or because other people, have influenced it. It's
not be reactive.
Exactly.
Okay.
I just wanted to be really intentional. Anyway, so this year my word is integrity.
Oh, now I'm trying to think of a word.
I know. Well, I kind of put you on the spot, but you don't have to think about one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any big overarching goals for 2025? I feel like it's our year.
I think it's our year. I have a lot of goals with the pod. Yeah, I just feel like, big things are happening.
Yep.
Big things are coming.
So many big things coming.
I think just being happy, being at peace, being true to myself.
Yeah.
I think is important.
Love that.
Yeah.
And actually this episode is kind of a lot of that. I don't know if it was meant to be a January episode, but it sort of ended up.
It brings you out of the January funk. It's these ladies are just so inspirational and they're so confident and at peace with who they are.
Yeah.
That it really is contagious. And so we want to bring it to you.
Exactly. So enjoy.
Welcome, Helen and MT to Dirty Laundry. We're so happy to have you here and so happy to have you here in person. It's so nice to be able to have our guests in person. So welcome.
Thank you guys for having. We're very excited to do this.
I was just thinking, two blondes and two brunettes.
I know. Literally listening to your episodes leading up to this, I'm like, these two are us. This is
so many similarities.
So wild.
It is so wild.
And then the second I walked in the door, I'm like, Amanda. She goes, I know, they're twins. It's too much. It's so true. But even just the whole coming together to do this. I mean, I approached Amanda. We had one coffee date, and I'm like, so I have this really cool idea, doing a divorce podcast. Want to do it? And she's like, yeah, great. She just says yes to any idea I ever have. And it just seemed so similar to your story. So enough about us, because we talk about us all the time.
But how long were you guys friends for a while before that?
Minutes.
We were
minutes.
working. Yeah, minutes.
Yeah.
We were working with the same mentor, doing our internship for our mediation program. And he was the one who said, you ladies should meet. So we went for coffee, and I was so intimidated by her because she was his prize intern. And so we met, and it was that was it. We were best friends.
Best friends.
Instant.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So we probably would have had a coffee in the summer, and then we started the podcast in March. So like 6 months
Like,
later.
okay,
Yeah. We worked on it, tried to obviously figure out what the heck we wanted to do. We had a million ideas, but logistics, we'd never done it. She hadn't even listened to a podcast.
I had not listened to a podcast.
But like, let's do this wild thing.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And how did you come? The name is great.
That's
How did you-
Amanda.
Okay.
That was me. I was in Miami with some friends, and it just came out.
Love
Dirty
it.
Laundry.
Yeah.
It is. And everyone shares their dirty laundry.
Well, you know what? They
Exactly.
do, and it's
Divorce is so hard. Of course, that goes without saying, and obviously incredibly difficult. We thought, can we just bring a little bit of levity? Like, can we just find the humor in it, lighten the load of those going through it? And of course, storytelling.
Yeah,
I mean,
sharing
that's
the
what,
stories.
takes down the
Yes.
walls of isolation when other people are going through it. So it asks a lot of our guests to get that vulnerable, that transparent about something that carries a lot of shame, right? A lot of regret, a lot of emotion, all that stuff. And it's like, here, come on, be vulnerable. Tell us all your secrets. So our goal always is just to create a really warm and supportive environment because it is hard.
And I think our show has really expanded into just, especially women's issues, women who've gone through some adversity. It doesn't have to be divorce.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own obstacles. They've come out, and gone through things, and they've made something of themselves and their businesses and their family lives and worked on themselves. And we really want to share that for people who are struggling and they're in it, right? And they don't necessarily see the other side of it.
Yeah.
That you can find happiness, that your best days might be ahead of you.
Yeah.
So true.
And both of you have some very interesting backgrounds of where you've come from, what you've been through, how you got to where you are, where you're, co-hosting your own podcast, the Helen and Mt Podcast.
Yeah.
So why don't we hear a little bit about how that came to be?
So I had a podcast that I was doing, and so I met MT 12 years ago. I did her photos when she was doing some modeling and acting, and we have a mutual friend. So I guess it was in May. It's almost a year ago because it was Cheryl's birthday.
God, it feels longer.
So
than
we
that.
got together for Cheryl's
God.
birthday. And we went out for dinner, and then we hadn't seen each other in a few years. It was just like, oh my God, I miss you. I just want you more in my life. So we started sort of communicating. And I was up at our, my mother-in-law has a farm, and in the summer, I was up at her farm, and I was walking, and I called MT on my walk, and she said, yeah, I want more. I want this, I want that, and blah, blah, blah. And I want to step into my power, and I want to do a podcast, and blah, blah. And I went, wait, go back. And I said, what do you mean you want to do a podcast? And she goes, I've always wanted to do a podcast. And I went, let's do it together. Come on mine. Start co-host mine. And she was like, okay.
Love it.
Really? Sure.
And we just started doing it, and we changed the name. We sort of, we got rid of Feminine Warrior, and we kept it like the Helen and Mt Podcast. And yeah, it's just beautiful. It's synergy.
And so, Helen, why did you want to start yours in the first place? What was
I
your
did a
inspiration?
book
Okay.
called Sundari Women, and it was a black and white. It was a coffee table book, and it was photos of women over the age of 50. It was 50 women over the age of 50. The eldest was like 96.
Wow.
And so what it was black and white photos, and then next to it they shared their pearls of wisdom, how they felt about aging, and some of it was positive, some of it was like I struggle with it. And I got a lot of press for it. I was on a lot of TV shows talking, and women were hungry.
Yeah.
They loved this, right? They were hungry for this. And so then I thought, well, what if I started a podcast and sort of around women and how we can step into our power, and specifically as we age, and sort of showing aging in a beautiful, encompassing light, instead of feeling like the best of our life is behind us.
Celebrating it
Right?
instead of
So,
hiding
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So it was during COVID, I started doing it. And I started with somebody else, and it wasn't a good fit. So we just sort of parted ways, and I kept doing it myself. And then with MT, like I feel probably like you guys do, like doing it with MT, like it just feels like a part of my soul is being fed when
Yes.
we do
I
it.
love it.
Yes, I feel
Yeah.
like that every time we're like together and we're doing this together and we produce these shows, and it's like it just fills you up.
Yeah.
It really does.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're both entrepreneurs. We both have our own business. It's really
Yes.
lonely. You're working for yourself, by yourself all the time. There's no one really to bounce ideas off of or brainstorm with or celebrate the wins or commiserate, the losses. And so with this, I'm like, oh, I have a friend. This is so magical.
Right, yeah.
And there are days that are difficult, of course, but at the end of it, there's just so much love and respect that
Yeah, exactly.
it
And
makes it so wonderful.
That's key.
And so what made you then want to do a podcast? You mentioned it to Helen. It's in the stars.
It was always my father was in television and it was a great speaker. So it was always in me. I felt more into the need of a podcast in probably the last few years when I really kind of dove into my spirituality and myself, becoming who I am. That took me up the hill a little bit more. And then with Helen, it was just the final aha moment. Like, okay, it is meant to be.
Yeah. I wonder if that is a sort of coming of age thing or getting into, I always say when I turned 40, I was like, oh my God, it's so liberating. And I have so much wisdom to share. Like I want
you care
to
less
talk to people.
and you know yourself more.
Yeah. And you're so much more sure of who you are and you don't care about, sort of, I don't know, the gossip or what people are talking about. You want to just let everyone else experience that same liberation.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. And so you don't suffer from the need to be different from who you are.
Yeah,
right. So
exactly.
We kind of mold our way into forming a different version of us into different, like in our 30s with a certain group and in our 40s. At this point now, it's like, this is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have a major life shift?
So yeah, I'm divorced
Okay.
now, almost 10 years.
Okay.
And our divorce process was very amicable.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we used a mediator and it was
Yeah, you did.
very amicable.
Yay,
Yeah.
Just plug for
mediator.
mediator.
Plug, yeah. You know what?
Well, I mean, there is something to it.
Yeah. So and it's, to be, your commercial right now that we wasn't like lawyers back and forth
right.
and, and it was just a very round table discussion
Lovely.
and mediating our way through it.
Yeah.
So that was probably around 10 years ago. But I think the biggest depth of my growth would have probably been 5 years ago when I really got into it.
Mm.
And then, so that's like, I think that is what I am now. I think the divorce was not, it was an unpleasant thing that happened in my life and I'll always have that.
Mm.
But I look at it that it has got me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So every negative experience leads to a positive consequence.
Like that.
So that's the way I have to look at it.
you have to,
You have
right?
to. The things
You
don't
absolutely have
happen
to.
to you, but they happen for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And I'm a better mother. I mean, I think I was always a great mother, but I think I'm definitely more open
Yeah.
because I know who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do sort of shift and compromise in
Yeah.
relationships, right? And a lot of it you have to in order to really
Yes.
make it work. There has
Yeah.
to be some give and take. But at what point are you compromising so much that you've lost yourself?
I would never say I lost myself. I think I was just quiet.
Mm.
And you mentioned that you kind of lose your identity. I never lost my identity in that I was always, I always try to pursue a goal that I wanted or a dream. And my kids are my life, but they didn't define who I am. I never
That's a very
said-
healthy
Yeah.
way to
Yeah,
You
I
have
never
two, you have
said-
two,
I
two
have two
girls.
daughters, yeah.
Two girls. And you have two
I-
boys,
yeah.
right? Okay.
But I never said, I never based it like I am who I am because I'm a mother. or I'm a
Right.
child. I was everything with the mind. So I had a big pie and my daughters filled a big part of it. And then I had everything else.
So Helen, you are a photographer by day, podcaster
I've
by
seen
night.
your work.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Oh
And
my
you
God.
photograph. I saw Gordon Ramsay. I saw Chris
love him.
Noth, who
Yeah.
I'm obsessed
Yeah,
with.
yeah. And so how did you stumble into that career?
Oh, I modeled in Europe, and I was young when I was over there and I was modeling in Europe. And when I was doing it, I was always more interested in what the photographers were doing. So a lot of times after shoots, I would ask them, like, can I stay and help you process the film? And they'd be like, what? And I'm like, okay. And that was like back in the day.
Dark room?
Right. And you probably like dark rooms where you have like the canister and
Loved
everything. And I
it.
loved it. And so I was in Europe and I came back. My brother got sick. And I came back and I helped he passed away. I tried to help take care of him. And then I was just lost and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I started working for a photographer and just as his receptionist and booking shoots. And I would just take pictures of friends for fun. And then he decided to retire. And the gentleman who owned the lab just said, I think you've got a good eye. Like, why don't you go out on your own? And I was like, well, I don't have any money because I was like working and bartending at night.
Sure.
And I remember I would go out with like $20 in my socks. So it would be like enough money to have like a couple of beers and get TTC home. And right. And he was just like, well, what if I co-signed a loan?
Wow.
And he, because he was going to make money off me doing the printing.
Right.
Fair.
And I was just like, really? And he said, yeah. And so it's that classic, feel the fear and do it anyway. Like I was petrified and I did it. And when you have certain mantras in your life, and one of my mantras was like, if you build it, they will come, from Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was just like, and they kept coming and they kept coming. And it was one of those, I think it was in alignment, a part of what I meant to do.
And I mean, it's beautiful. Like your work, I've seen it. And I mean,
Thank
like you reaching people and through that lens is really something.
Yeah.
And so it's probably given you a really interesting perspective on all the people that you've got to meet and work with. And I know you two work together, right?
Yeah.
She photographed you.
Yeah.
And
Well, all my relationships, I feel, my husband, I didn't meet, before him, I met a couple of boyfriends through shooting, but my, a lot of my relationships, my closest friends like MT or Di are through work that I've met them.
Well, I mean, talk about vulnerability and intimacy, right? You can capture someone's essence only when they let down their guard.
Okay, well, a plug now for...
Yes,
okay,
I'm just going to plug
Helen's
everyone.
commercial. I'm going to plug everyone.
Love it.
So your commercial is this. So Chris Noth was our guest on our podcast.
Yes.
And he said on the podcast, and he must have been photographed and like thousands of times, he said, the best photo I've ever had, it's been taken or I still use to this day is the one by Helen.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, Helen, I'm going to treat you a lot nicer than that.
I mean, talk about a compliment. Though.
Yeah.
Star.
So how is it working together? I mean, we've talked about this, beautiful privilege of meeting somebody and feeling immediately comfortable with them and excited to and empowered by them. But there's got to be some.
I can start that. It is a most beautiful gift. And I think, I'm not crying on it. But I think with Helen and I, we're so emotional. We're emotional people. And we're so conscious of if someone's feeling off or, I didn't text that properly. And so we kind of, rush and kind of talk about it. So I always say that if we don't agree on something, it's not about coming to the way that we want. It's how we get to the end, the process that is just it's a deeper bond. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because in the question thing that you guys sent, one of the things where you said like what we like and what I didn't say dislike, but what sort of drives you bonkers.
Yeah, that's
I think
for sure my line.
Yeah. And I thought, and it's funny because that was a question where that sort of stayed with me, and I'm like, what does that mean? And I just thought, I'm approaching 60, and what I have found in my life is that seeing how the relationships of women have changed and transcended, and it used to be that women, they weren't always kind to each other, or it'd be like, oh, she's successful, but, like she wasn't a good mom because she, and there was always like that, but there was always
so
that
much
but.
judgment.
Yeah. There was so, and understandably, because there weren't a lot of positions for women.
We were told there's one seat at the table.
If you were beautiful, you might take the only man out there, right? So it's kind of, so I get that. But I think that there's this beautiful shift that's happening. And I know in my own life, like, when I look at MT and she's pretty close to perfect, but when she's not, like those little broken parts that we all have, instead of looking at them in a way of like, I look at it of love, because I can only see those broken bits because it means that she trusts me enough to show all of me. Right. And she shows up every day. Right. I'm going to get this where I get teary eyed. But she does. Like, she shows up for herself, for her family, for her friends, for her work. And that we are not perfect. And when we can stand and have people that they see all of that, it's like that deserves to be celebrated and to be loved. And those broken pieces, instead of going like, oh yeah, she's great, but those little fragments are the ones that need the love the most, I think.
Yeah. It's like the Japanese tradition of like filling those gaps with gold, like highlight them instead of, being embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the work you both do, right?
Yeah.
Finding these people and making them see themselves the way we often can see.
And I think with our own businesses, we do that.
That's what I
so
mean.
They can carry
Yeah.
it through into our
Yeah, and
work.
we haven't spoken about Closette yet.
Oh, yeah.
And so to plug your, your commercial.
MT's commercial.
Yeah, but you also are very similar where you're helping people sort of feel their best and look their best and work with them and what they,
so
their vulnerabilities too.
I love my job, but more importantly, it's my team that makes it so wonderful and where I am now. And we're a style consultancy agency, and we have like sections. So we have stylists. Okay. We also manage and do all the styling programs for Yorkdale, Yorkville, and Baby Village. And then we started uniforms, custom making and design and sourcing uniforms for like Park Hyatt and Hazleton. And that kind of landed in my lap. I don't know. I do know how, but I was like, what? And it kind of took off.
Fantastic.
So but it's my team. And I'm a team person. And like with Helen, like I know you talked about you work alone, but I really love depending on the team or giving them the autonomy. It's like, you think of this project, go for it. Yeah. And I just said that to one of my stylists yesterday. She emailed an idea and I said, you know what? And went on with it. And I said, I love that you just were proactive.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to say, MT, what do you think about doing this? And because she knew that, it falls in the line of our company. Right. And
she would have your support.
Yeah. So it's Steph. And Steph says, because I feel really comfortable with you. And I know that we trust each other. And I think that's what's more important with La Closette, which is great.
So can I ask you guys a question?
Yes.
So having a podcast and being, being women doing it, how do you, because a lot of times when we start something where people say, oh, there's so many podcasts out there, right? Yes. There's so many. And my thing is like, there's so many photographers or stylists or actors or lawyers or whatever. And I believe that there's enough out there for everybody, and I think we spoke about that on one of the shows that we did where there's this woman, Louise Hay, where she said, and she said, if we all take our bucket to the ocean, we can all fill our bucket. Yeah. And I do believe that there is enough out there. But how do you respond? Or when people go, what's your podcast about? And it's like, oh, there's so many podcasts. How do you, right? Or what their definition of success is for a podcast. Yeah. So how do you guys?
You know what? And I'm not going to answer your question yet, but I am going to say it is hard to quantify the success. Because if you're only looking at the numbers, or if you're only looking at the stats, how many downloads, all this stuff, you're like, okay, well, we're reaching these people, which is wonderful, but we want more. And then we're so focused on, we got to get, instead of 1,000 downloads on in the first day, we got to get 10,000. Yeah. And you can kind of lose the purpose of why we're doing this. Yeah. And so for me, and I do get caught in the downloads and the likes, all that stuff. We all do. It's natural. But if I could just help one person, if we can just reach one person, and that's sort of why we opened, season 3 now that we're in, we opened it up to just anyone almost, and not to say we're not discerning, but there's many stories. Everyone has a story. Yeah. I don't want to limit because I don't know what's going to resonate. I don't know what's going to change the trajectory of someone's life. Right. I don't know what story is going to get them out of bed.
Hey, here's an idea. Yeah. There's no podcast with 4 people. There's smart lists with 3.
There you go.
Podcast. Yeah. And you know what? Further, what you're saying is like, it happened to me about, 6 months ago. I was at a bar and this woman came up to me and she's like, she recognized us from our show and she said, you know what? I listened to your show. I was going through divorce. I was on the GO train and I was having a really hard day and I, put on your show and I was listening to it and it made me feel better. And I was like, wow. I started to cry then and there. And I was like, that is why we're doing it,
Totally.
is to be able to reach
having a
people
coffee with somebody.
Exactly.
And just, that's what you want to be able to do for people.
Yeah. And it's not always just about divorce. It's about all kinds of life changes and things. But
our listenership, our demographic is predominantly women. Yeah. And it is this whole thing of, I feel like there's this dichotomy of, and we were just talking about this before, of like, we are confident in what we're saying. We're so confident in our messaging. We're so sure that we are on the right path. And then 50% of the time it's nothing but imposter syndrome. And we're like, why the heck are we doing this?
We just talked about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is part of the reason I was so delighted to talk to you two and looking forward to this conversation because you two are so focused in your vastly different day jobs, of this idea of just empowering people to be themselves and own it and love it. And I think that for me, I mean, that was not my upbringing, was just to be confident and out there. And I was very shy, still am. Like, people assume I'm a bitch because I'm just debilitatingly shy, which is really hard to come over. So when we started, even, I was like, we're never doing video. I want to be able to be, really true. And I think it's meant to be an auditory experience. I don't want to have to worry about what I look like. But then, you have to do what you have to do. And again, trying to reach a broader audience. If they're going to watch instead of listen, forget it. I don't care. I'm just going to show up as me because I want everyone else to show up as them. And if we got away from caring so much about what everybody thinks. I don't know if it's just because I have kids at this age too, right, in the tween years, and it's so much about like, oh, you're not cool, you're so embarrassing, watching that. And I remember learning about how, part of the reason why children find their parents so embarrassing is because we're typically at that age where we are confident. We don't care. I'm going to dance around the house and sing at the top of my lungs, and I'm going to scream for you at your soccer match, and I don't care.
So like who's watching?
Yeah,
like,
and they care so much.
They don't dance.
They don't dance.
Yeah.
They
don't
want
everyone to just dance.
They don't just let themselves be at that age because they're so worried about what everyone else
Can
will
you imagine though? I remember saying that to one of my kids once, and he more with my husband, because my husband, we have boys, so when boys would come and go, yo, what's up? This thing, and my voice would just be like,
bro.
Right? And I remember, when they had friends coming over, he said, just don't do anything to embarrass me. And I said, I'll try my best.
No guarantees.
Right? Like just saying hi is embarrassing.
So embarrassing.
But I just said,
sit there and say nothing, do nothing.
But I said, sweetheart, what would it feel like to you if when we had company over, I said to you, just, make sure not to embarrass us?
Great question.
And he kind of looked at me and I went, just think about it.
Yeah.
And that was it. And he never said it again.
Powerful.
Yeah. And he never said it again.
powerful.
So just like something when your kids do that, just sort of like, yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Helen, now as you approach 60, because that's kind of a big number.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? How are you sort of reconciling this in your brain? I mean,
no reconciliation.
No, we're just going. You're not thinking about it. I love it. Great.
We've spoken about this. I've never had an issue with aging.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of my childhood or losing my brothers and stuff, but I just have always,
the gift.
I just always look at women, like, and I don't fear, like when I, my role models where I look at women who, like, when I look at Lauren Hutton, and you guys probably don't know who she is, but, when I look at certain women, like, wrinkles don't freak me out and getting older doesn't, I think I've said this, the hardest part with aging is the boys, right? Is that I know when I leave this world, I'm their person. And I'm not going to be there to comfort them, and that makes me sad, right?
God, now we're all going to be crying.
So that's
as mothers,
like
I think the
kids put it in perspective.
Before you have kids, you think of your own mortality in a different
sort of
way,
right? Like it's just about you.
It's just about you, and then you have kids, and all you can think about is that you're not going to be there for them,
and that their hearts are going to be broken because you.
And I love my identity isn't being a mom, but I love being a mom. Like it is the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I'm really good at it. Like one of my sons was going through a difficult time and he said, Mom, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, honey, this is where I get to shine.
Yeah.
Like
you're
you're giving me a gift right now that I can do this with you, So I think that when they, when they transition and sort of move out and don't need me as much, I know that I don't think I'll be an empty nester in the sense that I'm sad and pining for them.
Right.
But what do I do with that need?
See, I think they'll come back. I think if you just
But my husband's because my husband's like,
they're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll get more dogs. And he's like, no, we're not getting more dogs.
But you know what? But mine have gone, but now they come back.
I know
Yes.
they do. You're close with your girls.
But
that's a testament to your parenting.
Well, I love the fact that when they come, my fridge is empty, something out of my closet is taken.
Yeah, you go shopping at my parents'
It's like, okay, that's it. That's my joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we spoke earlier about imposter syndrome, and I have to say, motherhood, I have been the most confident.
Yeah.
In every age and stage. I mean, except for postpartum, and that was a real bad time for me. But
I'm sorry.
as they age, I'm like, God, I am kicking ass at this job.
See, right?
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. And again, like, you know, I
Who'd
don't
have known? Who'd have thunk?
who
Yeah.
would have thunk it?
Yeah.
And I don't advertise that, again, going back to the sort of competitiveness of women, which is such a shame. But, you know, we still talk, we're like, why don't we talk about how difficult it is or how wonderful it is in many, you know, respects? Because it is, it's highs and it's lows. But yeah, no, it's, I don't know.
And the parenting groups, I find it interesting because the teen years, like to me, it's like that's when you
Right.
need the mommy groups, right? Because
it's so hard.
It is hard. It is
Yeah.
hard. And they're finding, you know, and they need that. They need that autonomy and they need that. So it is challenging. But let me ask you guys a question. Do you think, this might sound out there, but do you think your children choose you?
Choose us in
Like
what,
to
in what
teach-
sense?
What do you
like
mean
to
by
teach
that?
us?
What do you mean
To
that?
be so
Yeah.
when they, like, I always say to my boys, I'm so glad that you chose me to be your mother.
I do that. I say that too.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
do you
funny.
believe, because like how my boys are is like, I am the perfect mother for that. Right. Where maybe
Right.
MT's girls, I would,
you wouldn't do as good of a job.
like I just think
Interesting.
sort of,
I definitely tell them, like, I feel so lucky to be your mom.
Yeah.
Like, you too. What a gift that you have given me, this
Yes.
ability to be in your life and to know you. And it's funny, I have one of each, and it's very much, I can see, and I know we all project, but I can see what bits of them are me, what bits of them are my husband, what bits of them are just them, or somebody, you know, who knows in the lineage that I don't know. But yeah, I think I am not a believer in God per se, but certainly in spirituality. But this idea of, like, you know, you're not given more than you can handle. I definitely believe that their needs are ones that my skill set can support.
yes.
Yeah.
So if that answers your question.
Yeah, I was meant to be their mom and
Yeah.
they were meant to be mine.
But they're always
and,
teaching
Always.
you about yourself.
Oh, it's a humbling
Teaching,
experience.
testing.
It's really humbling.
And they say, like, my son once when he was 4 or 5, he said to me, he goes, Mama, when you die, I practice Buddhism. And he said, before you pick your next life, can you wait for me so that we can choose it together? And I remember just going like, oh my God. And I was just like, yes, I will wait for you, sweetheart. And we'll pick it together. Now today he'd be like, yeah, he's
go on about
agnostic.
me. Yeah.
No, like he's agnostic. He doesn't believe that anymore. But it's like these little,
sweetheart.
these magical moments that are just, that stay in your heart are just incredible.
Did you always want to be a mom? Did you
Oh, yeah.
know? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
MTU as well?
I never lived my life saying I need to be married, I need to be a mom. It just kind of happened.
I didn't have the married thing.
Or good.
Like,
it just kind of happened organically.
Yeah.
Like I'd never, I wouldn't. It's the best thing, but I just never said I have to be a mother. And I think that it's not only for people who aren't. There's a lot of people out there who aren't mothers, but you can have a connection with a niece,
Definitely.
a nephew, someone younger, and feel the same, and hold that space as a caring person, as an adult caring person.
Yeah. I think the role of aunt is such a magical one because you're once removed. So they come to you with very different, let's say, questions or experiences that they won't necessarily come to their mom with. And so for me, I mean, I'm very lucky in that I have a lot of sisters, whether through marriage or, my parent, marrying my stepdad, and then my siblings actually just bringing in wonderful women into our lives. But to have that village, it's antithetical to our North American lifestyle of live in your house, put up as big a fence as possible. Don't you dare ask for help. You've got to do it all. And I just want to tell everybody you don't and you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You need a village.
Yeah, and I'm very sensitive.
Do you have a village?
I have a village.
Okay,
My
good.
sister just lives like
Yeah, we
2
both
doors
are.
over.
We both are one of
Yes,
four
we're both
siblings.
one of 4. I'm
Yeah.
very close with my siblings and their kids and my parents, and so I rely on
is
them
great.
a lot.
Yeah.
For
Well, especially
everything.
going through your divorce and everything.
going
having
through
that.
divorce, being a single mom, it's in trying to balance work and going back to school and all the things. I really have, thank God for them, because
Yeah.
I can't imagine not having that support.
Yeah.
I have my
You
twin
really-
sister, but she's in Hamilton.
Oh, twin
Yeah.
sister.
I do, and we text all day long. But I just again,
Yeah.
the Helen thing. I just wish that she was we're closer, that we can just hang out.
Any last lasting messaging you would love to leave our listeners with? Thoughts, nuggets of wisdom, anything that you want our friends to take away from today?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is don't fear competition. And that means that you guys asked us to be on this podcast because we're all in this together. So it's not about, being better than the others. It says, let's just kind of unite. And you guys are a perfect example of that.
That's beautiful.
So
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you nailed it. And I think the big one for me, and I did something on it a couple of days ago, is that not to play small, right? And I think as women, we do that a lot. And I think take up space, own your space, be big, be brave, be powerful. And
Be loud,
because you're not meant to, I always say you're not, Marianne Williamson says it, but it's just that we're not, you do no service playing small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you guys, have us here, when we build that community, it's like, again, that rise, like we help each other. So when one of us goes, it's like, take my hand, like you're coming with me.
Listen, I always say that. I'm like, if I win the lottery, I want to give money to everybody because I'm like, let's do this journey together.
I know.
I don't want to be alone on my private jet going to my island. I want everybody to come with me. And,
You know what
I'd be on that
love?
private jet on your private island anytime.
I love that new movement now of women where it's kind of like when, like, let's say they split up or their husband deceased, where women are moving in together.
Oh, yes.
It's almost like the Golden Girls, but
Yes.
a modern gold.
Oh my God, we talk about that all the time.
I think if something were to happen to my husband, it's like, I'm get rid of Kevin. I'm moving in.
Totally. They've already, I've already established that. Like, so when you die, I'm going to go. Definitely.
There's something about women
beautiful.
that's how we used to live,
Yeah.
right?
Community,
In a
right?
community.
The red tent.
Anyway,
Exactly.
thank you. I felt like this is like 5 minutes, but I'm sure it went longer than we should have.
That's okay. That's what we have Ryan. He'll edit out all the bad nuggets
Okay,
and leave
good.
us the goods. And we never even talked about the Oura ring, but we'll talk offline.
Yeah.
We'll do that on ours.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
We'll
perfect.
save it
Done.
for yours.
Table
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both
guys
so much for
much.
being
You're
here.
welcome. So
Okay.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Awesome.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver. Produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.